Have you ever just wondered what really decides how tall you're going to be? Is it all written in your DNA from day one, or is it about, the food you ate as a kid and how much sleep you got? It's one of the most basic questions we have about our own bodies, and today we're going to break down the science behind it. All right, let's just jump right in with the classic question, one you've probably heard before. It perfectly gets to the heart of the matter, right? That whole nature versus nurture debate. Is our height something we can actually change, or is it pretty much set in stone? Well, the answer, as you're about to see, is a really fascinating mix of both. So here's our game plan. First, we'll unpack the genetic code that sets our potential. Then, we're going to get into the golden trio of lifestyle factors that help us actually reach that potential. After that, we'll look at the tools doctors use to track growth. And finally, we'll explore the surprising links between how tall you are and your long-term health. Okay, section 1, the genetic blueprint. Before we even talk about nutrition or exercise, we have to start here. This is, the foundation for everything else. It's the code that lays the groundwork for our final height. Yep, you're seeing that right. A whopping 80% of the difference in height between people comes down to genetics. That just shows you how incredibly powerful our DNA is in setting our potential. But that other 20%, well, that's where our environment and our choices can make a huge difference. So this brings us to a really important idea, the genetic ceiling. Just think of it like this. Your DNA programs a maximum height your body could reach, but only under absolutely perfect conditions. Your genes don't give you one exact number, but they definitely set that upper limit, that ultimate potential you're aiming for. Now, here's the thing. It's not like there's a single tall gene. Height is what scientists call a polygenic trait, which is just a fancy way of saying it's influenced by tons of different genes all working together. I mean, they found over 697 genetic variations that play a role, and some of them have a massive impact. For instance, mutations in genes like FGR3 or SHOX can lead to specific growth disorders, which really just drives home how critical this genetic code is. Okay, so our genes set the upper limit, right? But how do we actually get there? Well, that brings us to section 2, the golden trio. These are the key factors that unlock our full genetic potential. And here they are, what I like to call the golden trio of growth: nutrition, sleep, and exercise. Look, you can't change your genes, but focusing on these 3 pillars is hands down the best way to make sure your body has everything it needs to grow as tall as it was meant to. So let's break down the nutrition part a bit, because it's not just about calories. Protein is obviously huge. It provides the actual building blocks, but these micronutrients are just as important. Zinc helps kickstart growth hormone. Magnesium helps you get that deep sleep you need for its release, and vitamin D is critical for healthy bones. Even specific amino acids like arginine and glutamine can give you a little boost in growth hormone production overnight. And that right there leads us perfectly into sleep. It is so much more than just rest. For a growing body, it's peak construction time. Like the quote says, the biggest surge of human growth hormone happens in this very specific window during deep sleep. So a consistent early bedtime isn't just nice advice, it's a biological command for reaching your height potential. And finally, there's exercise. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. It's kind of like a double-edged sword. Moderate, regular activity is great. It puts healthy stress on your bones, which stimulates your growth plates. But going too hard with excessive high-impact strain can do the exact opposite. It can cause inflammation and damage that can literally put the brakes on growth. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Section 3. Let's talk about the medical side of things. What happens when a kid's growth seems a little off track? Well, doctors have a whole toolkit to assess, predict, and sometimes even step in. This is a question that doctors get all the time from parents. And while they don't have a crystal ball, they do have a surprisingly accurate method that goes way beyond just looking at how tall the parents are. The secret weapon here is something called bone age. And no, it's not just how many birthdays you've had. It's about how old your skeleton looks. So if a 10-year-old has a bone age of, say, 8, that actually suggests they have more growing time left than the average kid. On the flip side, a bone age of 12 might mean they're going to finish growing a bit earlier. So how do they figure this out? Well, they take a simple X-ray, usually of your left hand and wrist. And what they're looking for are these little gaps right here. See them? Those are the growth plates. They start out as soft cartilage, and then, over time, they harden into solid bone.
The size and shape of these plates tell a doctor exactly how much growing room is left. Once they close up, that's it. Growth and height is done for good.
Now, in really complicated situations, docs might bring out the heavy hitters, like whole exome sequencing. You can think of it as a super detailed spell check for your genes. It helps them pinpoint tiny mutations, like in those FGFR3 or SHOX genes we mentioned earlier, that might be causing a growth issue. So, if a test reveals a problem, that might lead to an intervention. And growth hormone therapy is a powerful tool for sure. But let's be clear, it is only for very specific medical conditions. We're talking a diagnosed hormone deficiency, certain genetic syndromes, things like that. It is absolutely not a cosmetic treatment to get a few extra inches, and it has to be monitored by a specialist. No exceptions.
And there's a really, really good reason for all that caution. Misusing this stuff comes with serious risks, from joint pain to a higher risk of type 2 diabetes. But the most mind-blowing side effect is that paradox at the bottom. If you get the dose wrong, it can actually make your growth plates close sooner, meaning you could end up shorter than you were supposed to be.
All right, for our last section, let's pull the camera back and look at the big picture. What can height trends tell us about the world? And what does your own height mean for your health down the road?
I mean, just look at this chart. This is the power of environment on a massive scale. The Netherlands has the tallest men, on average, in the world, while Timor-Leste has some of the shortest. And listen, this huge difference isn't really about genes. This is what happens over generations with access to great nutrition and healthcare. It's real-world proof of how much that environmental 20% really matters.
But here is where things get, well, kind of weird. When we're talking about long-term health, there's this strange thing called the height-health paradox. Studies show that taller people tend to have a lower risk for things like heart disease and diabetes, but they seem to have a higher risk for certain cancers. And for shorter people, as you can see, those risks are pretty much flipped.
So that kind of leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? We usually think of being taller as being stronger or healthier, but the real science shows a much more complex story. It's this delicate dance between the genes we inherit and the world we grow up in. And it comes with some surprising trade-offs for our health later in life. So you have to wonder, is taller always better? What does optimal even mean?